This is probably the biggest question. How are sidereal and tropical astrology different? I'm Janan Derso, and we're going to get into it. First of all, let's establish that every culture had calendars based on the stars, right? It's the logical way to count time. The Maya people studied the sky and had calendars depicting the movements of the sun and the moon through the constellations, and I talk more extensively on this in other videos. Historically, all cultures have used the stars to determine information for farming. I've also talked about the influence of the Farmer's Almanac and why this is a deeper science. So, part of this cosmic direction around guidance was to know when to plant. And the Egyptians had mastery over this. We know historically that they would watch the moon for information of when the Nile would flood. They would also watch the stars. And it makes so much sense because the sky sunned and watered their land, which they depended on for food and thus survival. There's also Eastern systems that connect astrology to their religion. So, for example, you've probably heard of Vedic or Jyotish astrology, and these were established very early on, so 5,000, even 10,000 BC, by the present day Indian culture as a form of guidance for daily life instructions. The Chinese, as well as the Tibetan, have different astrologies. They're very, very different. I had the unique opportunity to spend time with the Tibetan astrologers called Umpos in the Ladakh region of the Tibetan Plateau. Again, very specific form of guidance for their religion and their culture. So I respect all of these and I acknowledge that there's many religious and cultural ways of reading and interpreting stars. My disclaimer is I don't practice these forms of astrology. Why? Well, we know that historically navigators looked up at the sky to chart their course across the ocean, the desert, or a small tract of land. The sky was their navigation system, and it's still our navigation system. But you can't navigate on your map using coordinates from 2,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. It's tropical astrology, it doesn't share the current location. And so it's a stagnant view of the past, like a karmic story about what you would have been like 2,000 years ago. And this point is the first difference. And honestly, it's the main difference. And we could just end the video right here. If you understand this, you've probably grasped that if you want, present information, you're not going to get it from Western astrology because it hasn't moved. And so it's this standstill in time of what your birth chart was at the time when Jesus was walking the earth. So if you want to know where you're going today, you need to use today's sky. And it's changed over the course of time. So as much as it might be helpful to know what a celestial chart looked like 2,000 years ago, it's not going to have dominion in the present day, nor would it affect your plants today. I'm not going to go any deeper into this. If you want to chat about it, we totally can. But really, I'm going to shift to if you access the present sky, your attention is also in the present. And so this is where we heal. This is where we reframe with our breath. This is where we pivot into a vertical alignment. It's the present. It's the only option. Prayer is the only way to traverse time, not astrology. The next difference between tropical and sidereal is that tropical is often used as a form of divination. The Abrahamic religions warn against this use of any kind of divination because it becomes an idol between you and the God of your heart. So if you're practicing these religions or you're not, the question really is, do you want an idol between you and love? Do you want something to predict the outcome when you get to make that choice? So I see tropical or Western astrology as cloaked in a myth of stars from these two time periods of both the Greek and the Roman origin. Some call this symbolism a garment of skin. And I agree that stars are not a divination tool. I understand that many people have shunned the astrological viewpoint because they feel like it is tainted by magic and illusion. What I'm harnessing is what's available in the present moment, and that's sidereal astronomy, to be more accurate. I struggled with this in astrology, the prediction, the divination. It just felt so limiting and disregarding of someone's free will. I understand the laws of cause and effect, but at what point does someone's karma determine their destiny? And when do they get to break free from the chains? So, specifically, tropical astrology is this picture of your past. I use astronomical insights for present moment divine instructions from the source. So, therefore, if you want to be in alignment with today's wisdom, you can harness sidereal astrology, which is a picture of the present. So, what happens when we take off this cloak in tropical astrology? Well, the science of biodynamics releases the archetypes, and shares the influence of the constellations as elements. As my knowledge of the astronomical wheel built in truth, so did my faith in God at the center of the wheel. Biodynamics is the marriage of science and spirituality. In practice, what this looked like for me is that I chose to resurrect with the goal to restore peace through prayer. Peace of mind was my only goal. I didn't find this in Western or Eastern astrology systems. It was more about learning who someone was in the past and then a prediction of their future life path. And I instinctively felt that there was more to understand if the user's intention is to release thoughts that are not of love. Therefore, I asked the divine how to bring more peace into my mind through my life instructions. So if you want to use the sidereal wheel to guide you into knowledge over perception, perhaps you're ready to learn about the true sky. I have a program called Star Map where I show you how to astronomically track the constellations as they move through the cosmos. We focus on the Earth sign. We look at 12, 13, and even 14 zodiac signs, and I help you activate your present sky chart and what it means to you and how you can harness your energy with your free will and your spiritual practice to make the choices. Join me for more questions answered on the Biodynamic calendar and Sidereal Astrology. Let me know if you have any questions below and follow along for more. Peace.